Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, October 23rd, 2025 Mathews County School Board Town Hall meeting. Would everyone please join as you are able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair will be the facilitator for tonight's event, and item 1.4, I will read the town hall procedures. Each Mathews County citizen wishing to speak shall provide his or her name and address on the sign-up sheet provided at the entrance to the Brooks Auditorium. Citizens who wish to speak will have the opportunity to approach the podium one time and singly to ask a question. The citizen's question should be kept to a maximum of 2 minutes. Questions should not pertain to personnel or individual student matters. School board members and/or the superintendent will address each citizen's question. Once a citizen's question has been addressed, the citizen will have up to 2 minutes for one follow-up question or rebuttal. Once all initial questions from citizens have been addressed, and as time permits, each citizen will be able to ask a maximum of 2 additional questions. Citizens who are unable to attend the town hall meeting in person or prefer to submit questions by email may do so by using the Google form available on the MCPS division website at mathews.k12.ba.us by noon today. Please include your name and address on the form. The questions will be read aloud and addressed at the town hall meeting if time allows. The town hall meeting will adjourn no later than 8 p.m. this evening. Our first speaker tonight will be Cynthia Montague.
May I hand this out first, please?
Yes, is it, may I ask what it is?
It's a URL for Nelson County Public School Library, where they actually provide free online databases and resources for their students, unlike Mathews County Public Schools, which students have no access to. I gave this example 3 months ago. Assistant Superintendent on school leaving our website. Anyone else like a copy?
Ms. Montague, would you please take the podium?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll try to talk as fast as I can before I get cut off. My fight is not against the school board or the school administrators. My fight is for our students. Our students are being robbed of the opportunity to access educational resources pursuant to Virginia Code and your own school board policy on school library media centers. Our students lack access to resources, and in mid-February, 20 months ago, I phoned our assistant superintendent and offered to help the high school librarian develop a webpage, set up research collections, teach research skills, and find free online databases for students to use. I gave her the URL for Nelson County High School Library. As an example of a high school library webpage, she reported back to me that the librarian declined to meet with me, but she would develop a library webpage following the example I provided this morning. May I remind you, 20 months later, I spoke with the high school librarian and learned that there was no high school library page, and only RCC students had access to databases. I asked what had progressed with the implementation of the web page listing free online databases and resources, and she claimed that a web base was forthcoming, but she needed the permission of our superintendent. and assistant superintendent. Remember, this is 20 months after the fact. I also messaged a high school student who attends the governor's schools this morning. He wrote back, I don't think they've ever set up databases for students. We just Google, and they tell us how to look for reliable sites. Until a school board oversees administrators providing research sources to our students as outlined by Virginia Code and our own school board policy manual, I offer students the following link for free resources. Your student can call me if they need help with a research paper. I'll show them how to use databases to obtain information, analyze, use it, and cite resources. I'll give anyone that information now. My question, school board members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, you are failing our students. I have to wonder why no one is evaluating the school personnel who are in charge of instruction and supervision of instruction. This is negligence. Who is going to step up?
Thank you, Ms. Montague. Can we talk a little bit about the access that we do provide for databases?
I work for Nelson County Public Schools as an elementary school librarian.
Ms. Montague, we will be responding to you now. We are responding to you now.
I'll be honest, I don't know the specific databases. I will say that I worked with the high school media specialist on developing websites. She's been plugging away at developing the high school page. She and I spoke recently about that progress. I anticipate that page. I think she's pretty close to finalizing. She wants to do a couple more updates. So I anticipate probably within the next 2 weeks, the high school website, the library website will be up. But I can go back. I'm not clear on if these particular databases are linked onto that website. So I can surely go back and check when we review the website before launching it.
I would be interested in knowing all of that information. Members?
Yeah, I just have, so talking about having a separate page just for the library. Okay, and so in that, they will, I'm assuming here that they will have some kind of search engines? Is that, should we make an assumption or just make it easier for students to access, you know, from home or from where else?
Well, I think, sorry, the purpose for having these databases is that they're vetted sources instead of just whatever's going to pop up on Google or whatever random search engine. So they're going to have vetted, I don't know necessarily like research-based, but they're going to be vetted sources for students as they're conducting research for various topics. So it's just having kind of these are better sources, better repositories of information than just typing into AI or typing into just straight Google and seeing what you get.
Right, okay.
I think that's appropriate.
That's great.
Ms.
That's great to
Montague,
hear.
you have the opportunity for one more 2-minute rebuttal or comment on this topic.
I have to question who on this school board or which of our superintendents have any knowledge to know that the library is failing the students. This is your job to be familiar with instruction and resources. The school library media center is the center of learning in schools. If you read your school board code, have you read your school board code and Code of Virginia? Students are required to have access before school, during school, and after school. This is not being done. The high school library closes. Students don't have till 4 o'clock, which they should have, especially high school students. They are taught nothing. It is the librarian's job, the principal's job, to co-teach with teachers on utilizing research databases and teaching them skills, how to do citations. It is their job. If you look at any description of any librarian, they are teachers. they're not supposed to sit in the library and check books in and out. You know, that ended 25 years ago. And our students don't know how to do research. These kids going to college haven't a clue how to do research. And we're supposed to be teaching them that. If you look at your SOLs, they're supposed to be doing research. How can they do research when they're told, well, just Google it? And the funny thing is, I bet you, if I ask you, what is Google Scholar right now? How many of you know what Google Scholar is?
Google Scholar?
Okay. Do our teachers know what it is? Do our students use it? No, because no one is giving them free information and teaching them how to use these free, incredible resources. I can go to Google Scholar and research anything I want, you know, anything. And journal articles will pop up that are peer-reviewed. It'll tell me how to do the citations for the article. I can copy it, download it onto a Google Doc and save it.
Thank you, Ms. Montague. I do appreciate your comments very much. Thank you for bringing that to our attention again.
There's only one article on here that I've used, and it's because of what it is, and that's the Britannica. When I do history and I'm talking to someone, I want pretty much neutral facts, because some of these other sites lean one way or the other. And anytime you're going to talk about something, you better know the source it's coming from. Is it credible or not? And I would say on this list, Britannica is probably the most credible there is. I'm just going by the past. I don't know what's come down the pike since.
I appreciate that, Mr. Dobson.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Mrs. Hodges.
But when you have journal
Excuse me, Mrs. Hodges has the floor. Mrs. Hodges has the floor.
you're getting good information.
I'm a bit, I mean, I can't speak to the librarian and her knowledge base about citations and research. I do know that there's components in the curriculum, in the English curriculum, that does address research. I believe there's probably some in every grade. I know there's 9th grade. So to say that we're not doing it at all, I don't think is accurate. Can we beef it up? It certainly sounds like we can. So you and I may disagree on that, but we will certainly look into what the curriculum is now in the 9th grade, and if the teachers are fulfilling what they need to be doing in the English curriculums.
I spoke to a student this morning who's at the governor's school.
Ms. Montague? Ms. Montague, I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you very much. Our second speaker is Ms. Amy Bohannon-Stewart.
Good evening. My daughter played volleyball 2 years ago, and I saw sheriff's deputies at the games, providing security. And I attended 2 volleyball games this year, and I did not see any sheriff's deputies at those games. Why don't we have sheriff's deputies at volleyball games anymore?
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon-Stewart.
Sure, and some discussion about the need for having deputies at volleyball games versus some of the other games. Consultation with athletic director and some staff at the high school. They felt like it wasn't needed for volleyball games, so they were not bringing in, and then there's a cost associated with bringing in SROs or deputies after hours. So based on turnout and what they were in terms of need over the life of volleyball games, they decided that they didn't want to continue with that.
Okay. And I get to...
That was the rationale. I mean, I don't know if other board members want to
Okay.
kind of comment on it, but yes.
2-minute rebuttal.
Okay, so I just wanted to make you aware that I noticed, and I would like to see them return.
Okay.
And I have had parents say things to me and comment on, when we go to, it was a volleyball parent, when we go to these other events Away games, they're, you know, scanning us as we come in, and so that, I know there's at least one parent out there that felt strongly enough about it to say something to me more than once, that we weren't, you know, doing as well with sporting event security as other away places that they travel to. So, just wanted
Board
you to know I'm
members?
done.
I mean, I would just say it's partly the sheriff's department, you know, we need to also reach out to them to see what their resources are. It's again, a collaboration, so it's partly us and partly the sheriff's department. But again, I would say there is a cost, and costs, as we know, our budget is we don't have additional monies. So I think we can look into it. I think we should look into it and find out what keeps that from occurring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any other speakers signed up on the list. Is there anyone who'd like to approach the podium now?
Good evening, Sharon Fry, Port Haywood. I came to the meeting the other night and I felt like I was in Groundhog Day. Same thing, same thing, same thing, over and over and over. I would not like to be sitting in your chairs, but something is definitely wrong that our scores are not going up, our kids can't read. I have 3 questions and I have to decide which one I want to ask. So I guess on the top of my list is I wasn't here for the new financial officer voted in, and it has a lot of cost. We don't have the cost to have safety officers at our functions, but we have the cost for a new financial officer. My question is how did this come about? What is the job description of this person? And why couldn't the administration, the superintendent of schools, the assistant superintendent of schools, the board of supervisors, and all our financial gurus in our county that claim to know financial stuff and well-being, they're all versed on this, and yet we had to hire a new financial officer at the cost of $131,000 a year. And I would like to know what his job description is, that he can do it and our people cannot.
I'll start.
Daniel?
I would say we don't have financial gurus or haven't had financial gurus, especially in the school division. I'm not going to speak for the county side of that. There is a specific skill set and degree process that helps train a person to use budgets, communicate budgets, plan budgets, to effectively manage the funds that we get from the county and from the state. I felt personally, and part of the goals that were set forth to me was to do and have a better job done with the school division's finances. So as a vacancy was becoming available, we sought a person who had a very specific skill set, who had experience in managing effectively school division budgets to help our school division do a much better job of planning, communicating with citizens, with the superintendent, with the school board, and with the county where our finances are. That's going to help me make better decisions going forward in managing when we can make purchases, what purchases we can't make. One of the things that we began to implement this year was a much more detailed line item budget. We're working through that new process now, whereas before we were much more categorical based. And so if you've noticed over the last, I think, 2-3 months, the budget report that is in board docs is much more detailed than what you were getting in months and years past. So part of that process is to improve the school division's transparency of what's in our budget. It's the goal is to improve that communication with the county and with the supervisors, so there isn't confusion about what our numbers are reporting, what we're getting from the states, how we're expending the county's money. So my goal was to make sure that that the school division is doing a better job and getting better by hiring people who have a higher level of qualifications going into that. So this person is also able to oversee much more of the benefits side of the packaging and working with the schools and the school bookkeepers on how they're managing their budget and communicating their finances to the school division. So I'm anticipating much more efficiency in how we are managing the funds that we are earning and receiving, so that we can make better decisions on a monthly and yearly basis to create more efficiencies for the division. So that's completely my goal. To say that I could do it, my expertise is not in finance. Like, I'm not a finance person. I do not have an accounting background, and to assume that I would be able to do it at the same level as somebody who has that background I would say you're giving me too much credit to be able to do that, or any other individual too much credit. It is not, it's not balancing a checkbook. It is much more complex in terms of knowing the grant funds and the strings attached to federal grants that come in, to how the state calculation tool and SOQ, all of those monies come in, and the strings that are attached to all those. So it's not as simple as revenue in and expenses out.
Is he a grant writer? Will he be writing grants?
She will be working with us as we are applying for grants, because there's a match that almost always comes with state grants. Grant writer is not part of that job description now.
No.
No.
Okay, and the vacancy that was emptied had nothing to do with finance, and the
Yes.
monies were not comparable at all?
So the vacancy ends up being within that finance department. So the previous director of finance is moving into a different role.
All right, thank you for explaining that
Sure.
to me.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to approach the podium with a first-time question?
Daniel Schrader. I had a question about school safety, as I think all of you have been part of my email chain. Last year, there was a knife made in the high school, and a child was threatened to be stabbed with it. This year, there's a kindergartner who said they were going to kill their whole class. The sheriff was never made aware of any of these things. Last year, the sheriff pulled the SRO out of the school system. You had all summer to do something about it, and here we are, a few months into the school year with no SRO. But you had plenty of time to find a new CFO and increase our payroll. We walk in, the doors are unmanned and open and unlocked. Anybody can come in and do anything they want. Stash a weapon. Any of the kids in this next door can stash a weapon for tomorrow. Do whatever they want. No SRO. The superintendent and the sheriff are both aware of an operating gang in our school system with children as young as 12 years old with access to firearms. Not my firearms that my children know about, but their own personal firearms. You are responsible for our children's safety. And Mr. Morgan over there asked a good question at the board meeting. How bad does it have to get before you do something? What has to happen? That's my question.
I would agree with you that safety is essential and number one. I think we have some issues these are very complicated issues that are collaboration-based, that I anticipate in the very near future we're going to be rectifying. Dr. Daniel, would you like to comment on Mr. Schrader's question?
Sure. I mean, I guess to clarify a couple points. So we were notified, I think it was at the August board meeting, that Sheriff had made the decision to remove the SROs from the schools. The Sheriff and the Commonwealth Attorney and I have regular monthly meetings in an attempt to work through whatever differences, philosophical differences or concerns may have arisen. So the decision to remove the SROs came as a surprise to me and to the board on that day. We've continued to work with the sheriff to figure out a resolution to get school resource officers back into our buildings. We've continued, I've reached out, and we've had, again, conversations back and forth. She's working diligently on a grant that we hopefully will have notification of shortly that will provide some support to fund 2 additional positions. We've had conversations, the leadership of this board and the Board of Supervisors leadership. We have a joint leadership meeting to work on solutions for financing. Part of that financing coming from the school division and figuring out how we can allocate, move monies around to be able to support the return of those, or creation of those 2 new positions. I'm trying to think of some other, what do we need to do? I don't think we're, as situations and vulnerabilities, excuse me, arise, we continue to work to address those. So we've talked several times about this situation tonight. So you've got a situation where our doors are open, anybody can come in. We've talked about other vulnerabilities that I don't want to discuss in public to give anybody ideas on, and we've worked to balance traffic flow with students and access along with safety. I'm assuming, since you mentioned Mr. Morgan's comments last night, that you listened to the board meeting on Tuesday night. So I have a meeting scheduled with vendors for weapons detection Tuesday to talk through that process and getting those installed at the high school and then here at Thomas Hunter, that we can begin to deploy for any manner of events, volleyball games, board meetings, town halls, et cetera. We've had conversations. I've had conversation with Ms. Wilson about possibly using that weapons detection for supervisors meetings as well. If we wanted to kind of figure out a common space to then move those meetings to one space and deploy those weapons detections. When we do threat assessments, a school resource officer or a police officer is in attendance at those threat assessments. The incident you referenced earlier, I actually looked at that threat assessment earlier today. A deputy was in that threat assessment when that took place. So
Which one?
When you said the student had fashioned, you say a knife, but had fashioned an instrument. So a deputy was involved in that threat assessment. The student was sanctioned for that behavior. So I'll be honest, I don't know the details about a kindergarten student. So tomorrow I'll be going in and asking those questions to learn more about those details and to figure out if something fell apart, where did it fall apart, and what do we need to do to correct it.
You have a 2-minute rebuttal.
Well, I mean, the talk and conversations you're having is great, but it does little to protect the children on a day-to-day.
Okay.
That's where the failure is.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Yes, Mr. Dobson.
Problem is, the sheriff just went and did what she wanted to do. School board couldn't stop anything. Okay? That deputy was her deputy, and she was paying for it. Now, I'm not sure, but I believe that deputy was brought in and paid for to be an SRO. I'm not sure on that. But she elected to take her out without anything being done to take care of that afterwards. Then they come up with the idea about writing a grant. I hope to get the grant, okay? And that grant and those two officers that they're trying now will also belong to the police department. Because they would be under her command. Now, we have to have something this time to where she can't just arbitrarily pull back without a replacement. It's pretty much, there's nothing we could do.
I believe she asked for payroll assistance from the board, which was refused, and I believe the grant has been approved, from what I hear.
Yeah. It kind of was like, I'm going to say something here a lot of people will get offended by, but I'm going to take my toys and go home.
I heard that comment, yeah.
That's
From you.
what it appeared to be to me. So you can imagine what was going on. But the whole thing is, when there was nothing we could do about it. That person belonged to her. Give you a good example. When we do background checks on people that come into the school, going to work around the school, what have you.
Do you know why you do the background checks?
Yeah.
A parent threatened my child on a field trip, and there were no background checks on this.
Should have been.
There are none. None. She was
Should have
a
been
felon
done.
on
I
a
don't
field
know.
trip, overnight field trip.
Yeah, because the reason of that is, what I was looking at is, we have to pay the sheriff's department to run the background check. at
It
school.
doesn't matter. It is your
I know, but I'm just
responsibility to
trying to
keep these
show you
children
how
safe.
things get out of your hands, okay? There was
Mr. Dobson?
there-
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, I'm not aware of any declining of sponsorship or financial support, or any vote taken to decline an effort to support the SRO. Like, in our meeting, in that joint meeting, I said, we'll do whatever we can, and like, we'll find as much money as we can to contribute to the county's match for the SRO. We've had very positive conversations with Sheriff. I mean, Sheriff and I have been talking pretty regularly about a number of different topics, not just SRO, to like facilitate a quick return and facilitate resolution of challenges or philosophical differences about roles within the school and communication. I mean, I think a lot of the sheriff's frustration boiled down to some of the school division's communications that you've kind of alluded to. Some of it is in terms of procedures on lockdowns. Really, that boils down to when to run and how to hide, and differences in different protocols and things along those lines. And so one of the things after the incident that you referenced, like all of our volunteers, whether it's field day or any sort of volunteer, now has to go through that background check.
This is what I'm talking about. You wait for a very possible bad situation to react. This should have been in place decades ago. But my child threatened by an adult on an overnight field trip is when you choose to do it. It's ridiculous. So you're just gonna take someone bringing another weapon to school, and instead of threatening to stab someone, shooting them. And then, oh, we gotta change something. It's too late. And if it's my child, I'll tell you where I'm gonna be.
I would say that this is probably the third year that this board has initiated conversation with the sheriff's office to pursue a grant to try to get a second SRO in the schools. So it's not something, let me back up. We hear your concerns. We agree with your concerns. Okay, so you know, but as we move forward, there's been hiccups in this. Some that we would expect, some we did not, and unfortunately, it's taken longer. The last, I believe it's 2 years that we pursued that without anything coming out of it. So we've been left with one. Unfortunately, we want two. We need two. Now, I'm not sure about the background check for the parent. That certainly surprises me, because I thought we were doing background checks, so I don't know what the hiccup was there. But thank you for telling us that, because we do need to make sure that any adult with our students has been vetted.
Because parents know we pushed for that, we've had them call us and say, I just tried to do a background check. The school secretary had no idea what they were calling for. None.
The school secretary or administration? The school, in the school?
School board office,
What?
secretary.
Okay, so
Probably a wasted position if you're looking for grant money. Clean up that office.
we will look into that.
Yeah.
I assure you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader.
May I
Yes, Ms. Diggs.
speak? I want to thank you for your comments tonight. I think all of us
Ms.
are
Diggs.
very concerned at Mrs. Hodges. I can't push buttons right. As Ms. Hodges just said, I know that I am and have been for some time. When I was substituting, I know we had background checks for people who were helping with field day and other events, and I am surprised about what you just said about this volunteer going without a background check and threatening your child. And we will look into this. Thank you.
I too would like to add in that I am surprised to hear this, and I will definitely be following up on the details. I'm very dismayed to hear this.
Spring of '23, was that when the field trip was?
It was when Ms. Williams took her group.
To like Norfolk, there was like the FCCLA, Virginia Beach. It was like,
This year's trip, so it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay.
I remember that
Okay.
incident.
Okay.
right,
Banned from school
Right.
property, and they since pulled the child and
Right.
brought him in.
right.
Thank you.
That person's rap sheet was impressive on a field trip with children.
Point taken. Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Would anyone else like to approach the podium who has not spoken? Ms. Clark. Please state your name and address.
Julie Clark, live here in Hudgens. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but when Daniel was speaking, it reminded me of, and Mrs. Gibbs said that safety was number one, and it reminded me of something that I read in that book that I gave to Dr. Daniel on Tuesday about preventing school shootings. He wrote in the book, and I like this so much that I saved it to my phone. Wherever I go, I ask school administrators the same questions. What is your number one job? Nearly every time I hear the same response: to educate children. I consistently challenge this mindset. The purpose of school is to keep children safe and alive. Nothing else can happen otherwise. Math, science, sports, none of it can happen if there is no foundational purpose of safety. Education is an outcome of schools when safety is in place. When your primary purpose is safety, it makes you a better educator, because now you're no longer concerned with a mere test score or assignment. You're thinking about a student's emotional safety, psychological safety, and intellectual safety. Don't take it from me, the author. Take it from researchers who are smarter than me, such as the Harvard University Center on the Developing Child. We can't put a lot of this on having or not having an SRO. There are so many basics that are not being followed in the Mathews schools. I hear it constantly from parents. Doors propped open, door alarms turned off because it's too inconvenient to turn them off and on. Well, when it's convenient for you, it's convenient for an intruder. Now, like I said on Tuesday, I've been researching school shootings and safety-related issues since before Columbine. The Columbine shooters were wannabes who wanted to outdo previous mass school shooters before them. I have a website I just started about school safety issues, and I hate to say this, but I titled it, "How Long Are We Going to Play Dumb? How long are we going to pretend we don't know what to do?" These are basics
not being followed.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Your 2 minutes are up, and
Thank you.
You will have a chance to respond if when members or Dr. Daniel would like to respond to you.
I don't disagree with anything you've said or articulated tonight or Tuesday night. So it's a matter of continuing to be vigilant. I would say one of the additional pieces beyond having SROs or law enforcement is a culture within the school and within the students to see something and say something and to speak up when they have concerns. I think it's about 85% of school shooting incidents have some kind of leakage that goes along with that, so that there's typically some sort of advance notice that come, and so it's developing that community of students who are willing and brave enough to say, hey, I'm concerned about this student or that student, and then it's making sure that it's incumbent on the adults to then respond appropriately. And so I think there have been some situations where we haven't responded appropriately and haven't been developing that culture well enough, and also making sure that our perimeter is as hardened as possible, both with doors being left open or ajar. One of the areas I think that we need to work on right now, with the amount of renovation and construction stuff still happening, is while those individuals have been vetted and signed off on, it's the in and outs of those doors and making sure that they're not leaving doors ajar as well. So that's one of the areas
We saw
where.
the incident at Gloucester High School.
Right,
with-
exactly.
Yeah, I keep up with all this.
Yep.
So.
I mean, it's disturbing to hear that, from what you hear, that there are still.
Oh, I have pictures too.
Well, I'm not questioning you, but especially at the high school, there are, you know, there's so many doors that could be open. I know have been opened in the past. This is 20 years ago. We've discussed tightening that up, making sure that there is an egress if necessary, but not an ingress for the students. But it sounds like we have not been as effective as we should. So I think, you know, it needs to be followed up on, and
SRO
there's
is
no
just an
excuse.
extra layer.
Pardon?
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. An SRO is just an extra layer. We have to get back to the basics. And I've got tons of books, and you've probably seen them on my Facebook page. I post them on there. There are tons of books out there on these basics. There's so much information out there that you can't help but trip over it.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
And I could bring you a whole stack of books if you guys want them.
Well,
You should see my
but your
bookcases.
point's well taken, that SRO is another layer.
Right.
It's not it should not be the only
Right.
person. It
Right.
needs to be everybody being vigilant about the doors, about, you know, who's coming in, about, you know, watching the students as they come in. Make sure there's just, you know, 2 doors if possible that they're coming in, but making sure the other students aren't using them, or teachers for that matter.
Right.
And that's the first step. That's the first base that should be occurring. I thought that was occurring, but it sounds like there's some exceptions.
Right.
So it's our job to make sure that that's followed. You know, we go back and follow up on, but again, it's everybody's job, including the students.
Oh, yeah.
If you see something, say something, and that word needs to be out to everybody. I don't think you can say it enough. You see something, you say something, and that will begin a culture of we're all in this together, and we're protecting, to the best of our ability, each other.
You know, it'd be a great idea if each school had an assembly and explained, see something, say something. They should pick a safe person who they feel that they can go to. So they might not feel like one teacher or one principal that they're comfortable with, but to go to a person they feel safe to tell. So many times students have told, one little boy was actually kicked out of school because he told too late about a child who had a gun. He was kicked out of school, not here in Mathews.
Okay.
Oh, I've read that.
Yeah.
I've read that.
No, so, I just want to qualify that.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes, so they have to feel safe to do this, and they need to be some kind of an assembly, and parents need to be able to talk to their kids too, but
When it comes to unlocked doors, prop doors, alarms off, kids can't do anything about that, and parents are afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid, I'm old as dirt, so.
Points taken. I completely agree. I think it is, as Ms. Hodges said, this is a community, a culture within the community for school safety. And while this board will hear all complaints and concerns, I can guarantee you this board shares them. If we could fix it on our own, we would. We are in a collaborative relationship with the county and with the sheriff's department and with all levels in between, down to the students and every citizen. But I do know this is a winning issue. There is not anyone who disagrees with you about this in this community. It's just how do we get there and how do we implement these techniques, hardening the schools, low-hanging fruit. I agree with you on those prop doors, anything like that. And how do we do that consistently?
Right.
And everyone on the same page. And
Sure.
that is our job to oversee, to make sure it happens. And with
Right.
all the comments being made today, I can assure you it will be addressed. We, as five, cannot do everything alone. We need all of you in this together.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Clark.
Ms. Clark.
Do we have any other first-time speakers to the podium? Yes, sir. Just please state your name and address.
My name is Bill Johnson. Live here in the county. Put 5 kids through the school. You know, when you walk through the hallway, you'll see cameras. And those cameras were put in here in 2006. I was on the school board then. And we were able to fund that from some money we got from a defective roof that was put in here. The roof is fine. But unfortunately, 32 members of my alumni at Virginia Tech were butchered. So Dave Holleran and I, who got his doctorate from Tech, we decided to spend that money to protect the school. We had locks put on every door, sensors put on those locks. And if a door was open, you got an alert. Cameras went on. And what the heck has happened to that, I have no idea. You know, the problem that we had back in 2006 is a problem you have now, is that we were operating the school like it was 1965, with the doors wide open, people coming in and out as they pleased, you know, for events, assemblies, sporting events, things like that. Well, this ain't 1965. And it's a different world, and this is a very soft target. And I thought about whether I should make that comment with Charlie over here writing down every word like he did when I was on the board for 8 years. But that's what we are. We're a soft target. You got people streaming in and out of these doors. You can't have that. At the very least, you have to have a teacher or somebody. Maybe we can't afford an SRO. But you can have a teacher at these doors, at least eyeballing who's coming in. Because this is crazy. You can't have it.
Mr. Johnson, thank you. Those were your 2 minutes, board members.
All right?
Dr. Daniel?
I mean, the only thing comment as to the cameras. So we've overhauled all the cameras since 2006. So all the cameras are probably within 2 years old. The sheriff's office has remote access into our camera system. They have their own, it's all cloud-based now, and so the sheriff's office has that access to be able to, the SROs had a portal to go in to check out the cameras. I've got to go back and check. We've had lots of faults with our access control systems, the magnetic doors, and so one of the notes I've made tonight is to go back and check on the door alarms. Some of that is failing. We've met with companies to upgrade that access control system and have received some bids back for that access control system, and with the alarms being part of that upgraded system with key card access and various other things. So we do have some aging infrastructure. One of the things I would also add is we've had and found just the mechanical parts of doors that weren't closing and locking. So maintenance staff has continued to work to fix those, adjust those, replace those doors to make sure that best intentions haven't been led astray by you think the door has closed behind you and you didn't turn to pull it to make sure it was secure. But in terms of procedural for tonight's meeting or other nights' meetings, we've talked about it, but we've not put pieces in place for a meeting such as tonight, and all of our backs being turned to the door as folks are coming in. So,
I'll leave you with this comment if I may. Imagine this is an after-action inquiry. That what we don't want to happen has happened. And if imagine all the comments that y'all are making right now are being made in depositions. I'm a trial attorney. Just imagine this. Doc, I don't know you. But imagine if everything you just said right now is testimony in an after-action inquiry, both administrative and judicial. It's going to be terrible. Absolutely terrible. And you need to think about this. There was a gentleman back here talked about, you know, no more words about what you're going to do. You got to do it. And I will tell you this, I am more than happy. I know Sheriff Edwards real well. And I am happy to lend a hand any way I can. You know, for 8 years I served on this board. 7 years I was on the executive board of the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School. I've got a lot at stake here. Dr. Holleran and I think, and the rest of my school board members, I think we did a pretty good job. And I'm happy to lend a hand, and if it takes getting Sheriff Edwards in here, school board meeting, you know, we can all ask some questions. But it has to be fixed. You can't have this. You can't have it. Because it's not a matter of sometimes of if, it's when, and the softer the target, it becomes an issue. Small towns, we think it can't happen here in Mathews. And you just have to be real careful. A lot of at stake. You know, I love this book.
We all do. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Oh, you got a problem on, I don't care what the problem is, it's going to involve this.
I'll bet you can get volunteers to stand back at that door. I'll be one.
How do you know those volunteers are going to be the people you want?
Background checks. Background checks.
Background checks only so good to a point.
Better than no one.
Okay. We have auxiliary police within the county now. They're the people you want to use, but I never hear them brought up. Okay? But everything comes down to this.
I'll volunteer for free.
You know?
I'll start a group of father volunteers and mother volunteers. Dad's on duty. How about that? I'll even pay for the
I don't have a problem with that as long as the superintendent doesn't.
done.
Do we have another person who'd like to approach the podium who has not spoken yet? All right, there being none, we will start over. If there's anyone who has spoken who would like to speak, again, you may ask up to 2 questions additionally to your first one. I think we have someone approaching, but let's have Ms. Montague go first and then Ms. Bohannon-Stewart.
I hope you treat my partner, who is an attorney, kinder than you've treated me. I've been banned from working in the school system because I made negative comments about the district, and that's in writing. Don't worry, there won't be litigation because I love the school system. I started in 1985, was working as a volunteer for 10 years. Back then, I was with Mr. Harry Ward, who knew how to get things done, and a very bright woman, Dr. Mary Hellison, who knew instruction, knew how to supervise teachers, knew what the board needed to do when people weren't performing. And I asked you, Ms. Hunley, 20 months ago, when I came to you as an experienced educator with 4 certifications, experience as a school administrator, and I said to you, we have this problem that students are not getting resources. They need to be successful. 20 months ago, and now Superintendent Daniel is saying, oh, we're 2 weeks away from that. Well, I bet someone made a call to you this morning, and I bet it was the high school librarian at the high school, because diddly-dink has been done in the last 20 months about getting our students what they need. Harry Ward was a man of action. Dr. Hellison knew her stuff, and she made sure the students here had everything they needed to be successful. And I'm lecturing you, and I'm just sad. When I came here as a volunteer, I was at Lee Jackson, and I was covering the clinic. And 6 students, I actually wasn't covering, I was working in a classroom. I was sent to accompany a student to the clinic. There was no nurse. I called Harry Ward. Harry Ward was there in 10 minutes. I said, you guys are wide open for litigation. All you need is a student aspirate, fall, get hurt. The system's going to be sued. You know what Harry Ward did? Within 2 weeks, he hired a nurse. You all remember that? Any of you been here a while? I've run after-school enrichment programs at Thomas Hunter. I started Odyssey of the Mind, and I had been rejected from the school system, and you're still advertising for substitute teachers, qualified substitute teachers. I'd like to know, Dr. Daniel, what you consider a qualified substitute teacher.
Is that your question, Ms. Montague?
Okay. So we've contracted the substitute service out to ESS. So the qualifications are going to run the gamut. Ideally, we're going to have somebody who's a certified teacher, who works well with students, who follows school-based protocols, who is able to kind of pick up lessons, that substitute lessons or emergency lesson plans, to be able to work with students. Availability is kind of key. So there's a number of things that would go into that.
Are you aware that this school board filed an incident report against a qualified, certified teacher with administrative experience before she even worked one day, although she had 3 scheduled? She was removed by this school district. First, false information, said she had a history of accepting jobs and not showing up. Follow-up phone call said, no, that wasn't the reason. She's not allowed to work in Mathews County Schools because she has made comments publicly about the school system.
I'm not aware of that situation, but I'm not going to.
Do you want to speak to my attorney about that?
I'm also not going to get into like a specific personnel, individuals,
I
and.
understand.
Okay.
You're asking for qualified substitutes, and yet if someone criticizes this school system, you fire them. Think about it.
Thank you, Ms. Montague. Ms. Bohannon-Stewart?
So, in terms of safety, I think pretty certain it was the July school board meeting, not the August school board meeting, where Sheriff Edwards came and clearly laid out while she was dissolving the SRO program. But my question is kind of related to safety. How long, because we have some things we're contracting out now, and I want to know how long the contracts are with the company we're using for custodial services, I believe that's HES, and the company that we're using to contract with, get the subs in, ESS. How long are those contracts with those companies?
Those are 1-year contracts, renewable for 4 more years.
Okay.
So they're reevaluated each year.
Okay, thank you.
You have a 2-minute response to that.
Okay, thank you. I do feel like we are better off with custodians that are a part of our community. I view it as even part of Mathews culture as well as a safety issue. You know, in Mathews, for years, you go to school and you grew up with custodians that knew all the kids that, you know, you saw around the community, and they lived here and they were here and reliable for years. And I often worked late, and I was a single parent, and my daughter was often here with me late, and I always felt safe staying late and working late because Mr. Boo was here and Mr. Cleo was here, and, you know, had no problems letting my child play in the hallway when they were around. And I think it's better when we hire our own people for safety reasons, and just for, that's the right thing to do. We need their services, you know. Let's pay them fairly and give them the same benefits as all the other staff. And I think it would be better if we used our own subs, and the ladies in the front office that know the people were the ones that were finding the subs, as we had before. I worked in a school system where neither of those things worked out well last year. And another safety thing, one thing I did notice at New Kent Middle School, I believe they had signs on every door to the outside reminding teachers and students, because hey, we all want to be nice and open the door for somebody that looks like they need to come in. But, you know, maybe just a simple sign on all the doors, you know, to remind people, hey, we know you have a good nature, but you can't let anybody in. That might be something that could be done just quickly and easily to maybe prevent the propping open door issue and stuff. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon-Stewart.
I would just, Ms. Bohannon-Stewart, so we've, in terms of fill rates for subs, the last measure that I've received was we've filled 110 out of 113 vacant positions. To my knowledge, I think the 3 vacancies were TA positions. Actually, 2 may have been a TA and 1 was the nurse. I think there was a day, I think the nurse, we had a difficulty with the nurse. No, I think it was the art teacher. So we've had, again, 110 fills out of 113 total vacancies at that time. The challenge remains when it's less than a half a day. And so that's where kind of that struggle has been in folks picking up either a half-day position or what we're trying to work through right now is where teachers really just need to leave for an hour and getting coverage for that hour time frame to fill rate. So we've, in terms of overall success in getting fill, okay, just if that's the bar for success is fill, and that's somewhat of a low bar. It's been a successful venture getting that out. With regards to custodial contract, I do an internal sort of climate survey, and the overall, it's been positive feedback in terms of the contract with HES and cleanliness. It hasn't been universal by any stretch. So, but I think kind of a general consensus is that the high school seems to be a bit more pleased. The elementary school not as pleased with where the services have been. HES has been very responsive to us where concerns have arisen. I don't know if I guess you were here Tuesday night for their presentation to kind of talk a little bit about the influx of equipment and improvements that they've made. And so they're working through some of the challenges. I think some of the bit of the dissatisfaction at the elementary school relates to the amount of renovation work at that building did not leave enough time for deep cleaning of the elementary school prior to teachers coming back and kids coming back. So they weren't able to spend the amount of time they really wanted to. I anticipate them scheduling time over Thanksgiving and Christmas to go back to some of those spaces that didn't get the attention that they wanted them to do. So, but just kind of an overview.
Okay.
But we have, I think again, the HES rep Tuesday night talked about our meeting coming up on November 18th to talk about satisfaction midpoints or every quarter, making sure that we're satisfied. What changes, what adjustments need to be made with that?
Thank you for that explanation. The issues that I've heard of with it so far in this system don't have much to do with fill rates, but more like people not getting credit for what they've done or struggling to get the right number of days in the system that they actually worked in. So, but I'm glad you're not having trouble filling them. On the days that you can't fill a half a day or an hour, that's a perfect time for an administrator to step in and sub once a month, especially if a teacher has to leave for just an hour or half a day. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon-Stewart. Is there anyone else who would like to ask an additional question? We have a first-timer.
Donna Machen, Foster, Virginia. As I was walking in the doors, I was noticing the gun-free sign on the school. And when I come in and I sit down, I'm aware that unlike some of the buildings, the historic courthouse, where people are allowed to carry, I didn't feel as safe coming in here because, like this gentleman said, it is an unsafe environment not to have anybody here to protect you if a mass murderer walked in the door. My children and I, my husband, we've all taken courses on what to do. Look for the exits. We all know what to do. You have trained your teachers to know what to do. But looking ahead at the way the culture's going, I want to know what each of your thoughts are. Anyone who's willing to volunteer, what are your thoughts on training the teachers, those that are willing and wanting to, training them to defend their students, get their training, get their license, get their background checks, and the teachers who love those students, who are with them day in and day out, give them an opportunity to protect their own students if somebody walks in their classroom. And if it were known that there are even some classrooms where there is a defense weapon there, then there would be people thinking about whether they would want to take that action and receive that consequence. I know there are states like Florida who allow that. And I know our state has a long way to go before 2A rights are respected. But in this county, you can, as an average citizen who is proven trustworthy, and especially the teachers who you trust, what are your thoughts on giving them the opportunity to protect themselves and the students? There is real risk here. You can't go into Walmart without knowing that you're at risk.
I agree, but it's a complicated question. It's a very, I can think of scenarios on both sides that would have me take a different position, and I don't like to do that. I like to have a clear position, but on that one I can see where there's room for extreme problems with a carry and with not carrying. That, I would entertain a conversation though with our sheriff's department and with our county, and of course the board and the citizens on that. I don't think it's a simple answer. It requires a lot of thought and working out a lot of scenarios in your mind with what could happen on either side of that.
I agree with her comment. As a previous teacher in Gloucester County, primarily subbing here, and listening to what has been going on in our country with school shootings, and knowing a lot of the teachers here in this county, I believe that each one of them would do everything in their power to keep their children, and their classroom safe. I personally would have reservations about going forward with individual teachers carrying a firearm. I believe very much that we must have SROs in our schools. I think that is a main deterrent. I would hope it would be, but it is a good question that you ask, and we, as you hear people here tonight, we are concerned as well. Thank you.
Am I allowed to respond back? Has everybody spoken that wants to?
I don't know if there's
Let's
anybody
let a
else.
few more people if they have things to
Okay.
say, and then you do have 2 more minutes.
Anybody else down the line?
Thank you for raising the question. I think as both my colleagues have mentioned, it's a complicated issue. As I think through the scenarios, I just think if there was someone that came in with a gun, and it probably would be a military-style weapon, I think that teachers couldn't move fast enough to unlock whatever they needed to unlock, to access the gun, to be able to get it out, to do anything, plus having to keep their children safe and get them where they need to do. I see it as more of an accident happening with the students with the gun. That I'm open to a conversation, as Dr. Gibbs said. I'd like to hear the other side of it. What I have not done, I'd like to do some research to see what school divisions have had it, and have there been any accidents? Have there been any successes? I just don't know enough about it, but my first gut response is I just see that there's too many moving parts for a teacher in that moment to be able to access a gun that's probably locked up, at the same time simultaneously trying to keep her children safe. And that's, to me, a formula for more people being hurt or dying.
I think the first step, I believe there's some code language within Virginia's state code that prohibits non-law enforcement or retired law enforcement from being able to have weapons on school property. So the first hurdle to that would be the code of Virginia changing to allow that. The second piece, I believe Florida's policy allows for retired police officers, or I think the caveat is if you then get certified as a teacher, you have to go through that law enforcement training initially, and then repeat that training each summer to continue to have that, I guess, authority as a teacher to have a weapon. So I think we can have those conversations once the state code sort of opens that up. I think the sweet spot is then looking at school security officers, not school resource officers. And you can, if we are able to attract retired law enforcement to be school security officers, they would have that legal authority to be armed and work in the school buildings. Again, it's finding that window. The SRO grant couples with an SSO grant as well to begin those programs. But again, you would need to be currently a retired law enforcement, I guess you could, if it's part-time or something like active law enforcement, or I don't know about the auxiliary criteria in order to be that school security officer. And then the school security officers actually are employees of the school division, whereas school resource officers are employees of the sheriff's office. So that kind of helps a little bit of that line, and also that payroll piece as to who's funding, who's supporting, whose budget does it come from. So I think we're like.
Mr. Dobson?
Well, the state of Virginia, if you want to get a carry permit, if you're ex-military, you don't have to take the course. So you have another resource group of people there to draw from. Military is hell on safety when it comes to weapons. So you got a person that knows safety. Now, I'm not gonna say you got a person that can be vented, because you probably would weed some people out regardless. But that's another source of people they could possibly draw from.
Any other comments?
May I?
Ms. Diggs and then Mr. Morgan.
You want him? Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Diggs. Ladies first.
I started to make this comment on Tuesday evening at one point, but I did not. My father was a hunter. We have lots of hunters in our family, and I believe in that amendment, certainly. I believe that the school shootings that we know about today, that have been happening for years, I thought after the one in Connecticut with the elementary children, I thought that a ban would be made on these assault weapons. And today, in 2025, we still do not have that. And I think that is a huge failing within our country for safety of our children and students and people across the board. And that worries me considerably because, as Ms. Hodges said, someone coming in that door probably would not have a small weapon. And that is another concern of mine for a teacher carrying or being able to carry within the school system. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes, just a couple of quick comments. I'm no expert on security by any means, but I do have a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of experience, having worked over in the hospital as a security officer for a period of time. To me, in my opinion, when you put a sign on your door that says gun-free zone, what you're telling people is there's no one in here that can defend themselves or anyone else. So I'm not real sure that advertising the fact that you're defenseless is necessarily a good idea. We could debate that all night, I know. As far as arming teachers or any other staff, it's tricky. As I believe Ms. Hodges said, a lot of moving parts, a lot of questions, a lot of what ifs. I get it. I do get it. However, we don't have any problem whatsoever allowing law enforcement in our buildings armed. No problem at all. We don't seem to be the least bit worried, concerned, afraid, or anything else. What makes those officers so special? Training. And they're not the only people in the world that can be trained. Would I suggest or support just arming teachers at random? No, absolutely not. It would require very extensive training. Not everyone's going to be willing. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. But if someone was willing, teacher or any other staff member, or for that matter, as Dr. Daniel has brought up numerous times, a school security officer, if that person was willing to go through the extensive training, get all the background clearances, everything just like a police officer, only you're not a public servant, you're a protector of the schools, I would have no problem with that. And annual training, refresher courses, I know even police officers, they have to go to the gun range every so often and qualify. They have to, and God forbid we ever had to use that. But I just have to ask this one question. Is it such a risk and so uncertain to properly train our own staff? Does that risk or that fear outweigh protecting our children? Because you put one SRO in the schools, or two or three, they can't be everywhere at one time. So, Ms. Machen, to answer your question, I would certainly entertain that idea. Would come with lots of caveats, of course. Lots of training, lots of background check, lots of all that good stuff. But I would not write it off simply because I was afraid of the liability.
Mrs. Mrs. Hodges?
I've just looked at some things up, and I'm going to quote some of them. And this is out of Texas. One of the most candid conversations we have had with school districts is when an officer shows up and doesn't know if you're the good guy or the bad guy, he's not going to ask any questions. The other thing it talks about, and I want to make sure I get this accurate, is talking about even the most highly trained law enforcement officers in the country see that their ability to shoot accurately decreased significantly in an active shooter situation. So here we have the most trained, that they're not in an active shooter situation. Their accuracy has diminished. So here we're asking teachers with less training to possibly take on some of these roles. I just see it being more people getting hurt is how I see it. But I would like to hear more about it, if that's the direction the board wants to go. A robust conversation.
Absolutely. Ms. Machen, you have 2 minutes to respond.
We're already in a situation where we're all at risk every day.
We are.
And the risk is getting greater. If you have had a chance to take that course, they showed years ago there was one flash on the map, a shooting here, a shooting here, a shooting here. And now it's going off like fireworks, okay? And it's only going to get worse until something changes in the moral fiber of our nation. Until we can do more, shouldn't we do the least we can? Shouldn't we do something with the door right now? If it were me tomorrow morning, I'd be making calls. I'd be making calls. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Machen. Ms. Clark, second question. I think I've got that right.
I would just like to say, who are school shooters?
Kids.
Median age is 16. The youngest has been 6 years old. 2 6-year-old school shooters, 1 killed a classmate. In Highland Ranch, Colorado, during the STEM school shooting, it was one of the rarer pairs of shooters. A deputy actually shot a student. The student survived with minor injuries, but with the gunfire going off, Molotov cocktails had been set off in the hallways. A student was shot by a deputy, and he still feels horrible to this day about it and said that he just couldn't live with himself if the child had died, because this was an innocent child running to safety. A gun-free zone sign is not going to stop a school shooter, because most school shooters are students and current students. The intruder shooters are more rare. More than 80%, 85 and up percent is handguns. The media really likes to embellish these sensational stories, and I talked to a reporter once who told me they make lots of money off of school shootings. That whenever there's a AK-47 assault rifle is used, that gets all the headlines. But more handguns are used in school shootings. We don't even hear about most of the school shootings because they're not sensational enough. So we can't go by just what we hear on the news. Bill Johnson, who was here a minute ago, mentioned after-action reviews and incident reviews. There are some very good ones for free online. One was by the Arapahoe, Colorado school shooting. That incident review is available online. They were very forthcoming and admitted all of their mistakes, what they should have done, what they could have done. And so this is one of the best after-action reviews that are out there. And it's like the end by saying, if there's ever any kind of, I've studied every rabbit hole up and down for almost 30 years. And so when I'm hearing somebody talking, it's sending off little dings in my head. So that's what I wanted to mention about, would a teacher be able to shoot a child? And then Ms. Hodges made the
Ms.
great
Clark,
point.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. 2 minute,
Okay.
but do we have some feedback from Ms. Clark regarding her comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. You,
Salient point.
pardon?
Salient point.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that Ms. Hodges had mentioned about the AK-57s and such, that, she's right, there's a lot of moving parts in that, and a small handgun is not going to stop that. And one real-life scenario, 13-year-old was taking a test, finished early, asked to go to the bathroom. There was nobody in the hallways. He went to his locker, got 2 handguns, walked back to his class, shot the teacher, and shot another student. It happened just that fast. There's no way that teacher could have gotten up and unlocked a gun.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Sharon Fry, Port Haywood. This is a school board meeting. I feel like it's been a safety meeting. But what I'm concerned about are the children's scores. I'm really, really concerned about our children's scores. This lady talked about our children doing research. Before they can do research, they have to be able to read. My question is, why can't we get our scores up? I sit at home and I think, how can we motivate these children? How can we motivate them? I had a little conversation with Dr. Daniel the other evening, and I'm saying, do the teachers require book reports? Do the teachers ask for essays? Do the teachers give them homework? Do y'all check on what the teachers are doing? I'm told that these students, according to grade level, can only have so many minutes of homework an evening because of our Virginia State Board of Education. My question is, like Mr. Morgan said the other night, how come we could add 2 and 2 and we could read in a classroom of 30 students? I never had less than 30 students in my class, from kindergarten to 8th grade, and I can read and write. Why can't our children? Are we looking at book reports? Ms. Gibbs always talks about achievement, achievement, achievement. This is what I want too. And if you could, I volunteered 4 years ago. I have been vetted. I have not been called the first time to help with anything. And I am quite proficient. I love children. I can really do well with children, but I haven't been called. And other volunteers, my friends, haven't been called either. We have been vetted. But if there's anything I can do to help these children get motivated, write book reports, write essays. We're not teaching critical thinking. They can't even add 2 and 2. And that is another question I have. Dr. Daniel said something about the SOLs. I know my 2 minutes is up. SOLs don't ask the children for 2 and 2. They ask a complicated question. My question is why? Don't you all want to know why? I just want simple math.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. I agree with you. That's the ultimate question. Why?
Yeah.
What is so difficult? What is so different now from when we were in school? And I would say everything. But the question is, so what? How do we make it happen? That's what we have to do. So I think that we are on a path, and others can chime in on this, and Dr. Daniel will have something to say. In my opinion, the first thing is realizing where we are. We're really at the beginning of understanding where the children are and then being able to address their needs. I don't believe that was done satisfactorily in the past in this division at great length. That is my personal opinion. I believe we are on a path because we have a leader who believes that we need to do that and that everyone is doing it with everything they've got. But we are up against some incredible obstacles for implementation. I think the world has changed, schools have changed. The school environment is unrecognizable compared to when you and I were in school. Doesn't matter. We still need to do this. So this board is dedicated to doing it. We are trying. I worry about it every day, and I am sure that this entire board and admin worries about it every day. We feel strongly about it just like you do. If we had the easy answer, it would have been done.
Do they do book reports? Are they given homework?
Yes, I mean, the book report piece, as you and I were talking about Tuesday afternoon, like, so we have to follow the Virginia Literacy Act, which really structures like what the reading program is. We have to follow what state-approved high-quality instructional materials. HQIM is a state kind of category. So we're required to implement Code of Virginia, Virginia Literacy Act, and textbook procedures and that act is quite regulated and structured as to specific lessons and timelines and what we can do. Kind of the independent book report of old is not part of that science of reading, is not part of the HQIM process that we are mandated to follow.
So they are not required to read a book and write a report because the Virginia Education Department said they can't.
It's not part of the HQIM. I mean, it's not part of the regular instructional progress or process.
Doesn't that put up a red flag up? Doesn't that make a red flag?
Again, like, there's only so much wiggle room we have. Like, we're following law. We're following the state law as to what we have to do.
Isn't that sad? That's how come more people are homeschooling. They're dumbing our children down. When you get a child to read a book, you want a report. You want some critical thinking of what they thought they read. This is sad.
So I don't want to, again, I feel like I'm doing all the talking, but while the STAR data from Tuesday night was not impressive, that's one piece of data. I mentioned like triangulating data. So over the last 5 years, our reading performance has increased. So there are gains being made. Last year's pass rates for Mathews in reading exceed the state average. So like
Wasn't it 67?
For reading? No.
Fourth grade was 82.
Yeah, I don't have the exact, I'm looking at bar graphs, so I'm looking at kind of what,
And to me, those bar graphs are like word salads.
Okay.
I have trouble with those, but I did see 67.
But in terms of kind of where are we where we want to be? No, our strategic plan is to be at 90%. So that's a 5-year goal to get us to 90% and trying to get incremental, year by year, trying to get 5%-ish growth. But over the last 5 years, we're above where we were 5 years ago. The same is true in mathematics. Again, are we at that 90%? We are not there. But to say, like, we are making gains, progress is being made. There are massive gains in third grade reading, various other places with math. Our elementary school and middle school are making the greatest gains in reading and math performance. The high school will begin to see that as higher skills are matriculating up the grade levels. But we're building kind of background and foundational skills. It takes time to see all of those efforts to fruition. And again, we're also at the will of the state as to what we can do and what we are required to do in terms of instruction and what programs we have to offer. Kind of what we had talked about Tuesday afternoon as well, or Tuesday after the meeting, is that we are anticipating a similar HQIM for mathematics. We've been awaiting approved textbooks from the state in mathematics. That has been delayed. Well, I guess there's a tentative list now, so we'll be going through the mathematics textbook adoption process. So again, the state says you have to do X, but we're not telling. So it's a constant reaction that we're trying to adjust to. So, but it's getting better. It's not at the rate we want it to, but we're getting there. And I think one of my goals, and is probably one of the areas that is easy to criticize, is the amount of data and what is the data showing and working through that. We're trying to be, my goal and the board's goal is to be open and honest and transparent about how are our kids doing and performing, and where the weaknesses are, and what are we working on to address those. So that's in the academic realm. We've talked a lot tonight about the safety realm, and we've where our deficiencies are in that safety process. So it would probably be easier if we didn't share as much information and sort of like just told you once a year.
Actually, it's quite good. At least we know where we are and where we need to be, and we can pray on that.
That's right.
Thank you.
Ms. Diggs?
This has been... Okay. This has been a couple of years ago when I was substituting, but one fourth grade classroom that I regularly subbed in, I read to the children every day at least once. And when I was doing the long-term sub twice in third grade, the teacher had the class broken down into reading groups that I rotated to me, and they were on point on what they were supposed to be doing in those specific reading groups, trying to get them up. Just to let you know, I don't know what it is today, but what it was a couple of years ago was encouraging as far as reading to me.
Now, do y'all go into the schools and see what the teachers are doing, see if they're having reading groups, seeing what they're doing? As a school board member?
Go ahead.
I personally think that that's the role of the principal. I don't think for me to walk in a classroom to see what's going on in that given moment is going to give me much information to carry away that's either correct or incorrect. So I rely on the principals who are in the school, in the classrooms regularly. We have to trust them.
Well, we have to trust our children too, but we always go look in the door.
For me to go into a classroom and then they don't have a reading group because they're doing something else, doesn't mean that they're not doing what they need to do. And I don't believe that's the role of a school board member. That's my opinion. My colleagues may be different.
But your presence is everything.
I would like to get back to what I've heard over and over again about when we were in school, children all learned to read, and I don't think that is accurate. We did not keep track of where students were, how many didn't finish school and dropped out before high school. We didn't keep track of who was reading on what level at any given grade. The only thing that I recall is those Iowa tests that you would take until you got to the PSATs and the SATs. There was not this kind of scrutiny on school divisions until 2000, and when Mr. Bush came in and No Child Left Behind. That's when it began. And so I think it's not fair to say that children all learned to read back in the 50s and 60s and before then. And I've said before, my husband would tell me all the time, so-and-so dropped out of school at this age, so-and-so didn't come back to 5th grade, so-and-so did this. So there's many, many people, and we also know from adult literacy, there are many people in our communities that do not read at all. So I don't want to, because our friends read, and our groups read, that everybody that came through school then. But the difficulty now is the scrutiny, and not just the scrutiny from any year to year, and then they change the tests. The teachers learn what to teach, and the Department of Education says, oh, now we're going to change what we're testing you on. So it's a moving target at every given point. Not to say that we don't need to do our due diligence, but it just makes it increasingly more challenging for those test scores to be where we want them to be. It's just an incredibly moving target. And for our teachers, it's incredibly changing from year to year about what's expected from them. Thank you.
I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and every single year from 1st grade to 8th grade, we had to take a state board test. if we didn't pass the test, we were retained in in that grade. New York.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Is there anyone else who would like to approach?
Can you state my name again? Daniel Schrader. So I heard Mr. Dobson was talking about money, and the school didn't have the money. So I'm not going to preach my pedigree, but I love numbers. Love them. So we have a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, and a CFO, which was my previous title. A good CFO can write their salary by the amount of money they can save a school system or any company. And my wife was able to spend 15 years in the public employment before she had to get out. She was sick. So go on down, we have a executive assistant and then a secretary. I work in private sector. I know that the leaner the administration is, the better a company can run, much more efficient. So I don't know why, when we don't have money for security, we have over $500,000 in payroll in an administrative building that is more secure than our school system that keeps the doors locked. You can't even walk in the place. And when you did your volleyball, the door was propped open with a rug that I took a picture of. No one was manning the door, no SRO, no nothing. Anybody could have come. The whole faculty was in there. They could have had a field day with you. But $500,000 of payroll in a building that stays locked all day to the public, more secure than our children's schools are. So $500,000. There's money for your SROs, for your SSOs, for training, teachers, all kinds of things, if you trim that up some. My opinion.
Do you have a question to add to that, or?
Why do we need to have so much money in one building? For the size of a school system we have, 725 students? It just doesn't make sense to me why you have a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, an executive assistant, a secretary, and a CFO. The level of management in one building for a school system so small would never fly in a private sector.
As we compare even to like size divisions, we are the leanest of comparable school divisions in terms of the amount of staff. The number of state reports and reporting that we have to do is the same as a Virginia Beach, a Henrico, a Loudoun, a Prince William. That requires time and pieces and just things we have to do. The assistant superintendent is also our division director of testing. She is the director of human resources. She's also in compliance in terms of policies and state code. Most other school divisions, those are additional staffed positions. A lot of our payroll expense is that we have experienced people in those upper level positions who've been in those positions for, in some cases, decades. So as you get towards the end of your career, you're making more than somebody who was in the first year of that position. I know it's, I mean,
I know all
we don't agree. I mean, I
know
understand
what you're
that.
talking about. I know
Okay.
exactly what you're talking about. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Anybody on the outside is going to look at it and say, why?
No, I get it.
I hear you. I retired from Gloucester 10 years ago, and I know what figure I was making when I retired. And it doesn't hold a candle to what people are making now, and it's a different day. But I was going to address Mrs. Montague, who has already left. But I want to say to those that are here, in my second year now on this board, I have been in the school board office, I've been in the schools, but particularly I knew Harry Ward, and I still know Mary Hollison. They were wonderful, wonderful leaders. I admired them very much. They got things done. But in my time on this board, I have seen the dedication of Dr. Daniels and the people in that office that have multiple things to do. I don't ever go in there when somebody's sitting back with their feet propped up. They are always dedicated to the job they're doing, and they have been extremely helpful to me because I needed it, still do. And I believe that each person on this board is trying to do the best job that they can for you all, and I'm so glad. I know it's a small group here tonight, but you all are genuinely interested in what is going on, and Lord knows we are too. But I just want to say I've seen a level of dedication in Dr. Daniels and in the other people in the office and others here. The work ethic is immense. And anybody who's paid attention this summer, when the kids were out of school, the work that has been done on this building in particular, but the other two as well, to get them better than they have been, it's astronomical. And I'm delighted with it, and my hat is off to you.
I've had good interaction with Dr. Daniel, and all of you really, individually. I can't fault any one of you. I think you all know me very well.
Well, a lot of people don't see what goes on, okay? We got the superintendent, the assistant. You got 5 people in the hedge shed, 5 people. And all I ever hear is they're overpaid. They're overpaid. When you look around the other school districts and you see what people are getting paid, we don't have an overpay. We got below average in most cases. The problem is we can't go out and hire the ones that want another $60,000 on top of it. We have to hire and go a little bit more in order to get what we want. It's the same with teachers. You look around the district, we're the lowest paid when it comes to paying teachers. It's because we don't have the money. You have to remember where the money comes from. All right? And until they change the way they fund schools, we're going to be operating the way we are. I don't care who's sitting on the board or who you got. You can only go so much. And I don't see this changing anytime soon unless they change the way that they collect the money for us to have education. Okay? You can't, like, it's based on the value of the land, but then you have to look at the people that are living here. And when you have 40% below poverty level, you're paying a lot more money because 40% of the people can't pay. Yeah. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. And then the second thing is you really don't want to be the lowest man on the totem pole because you ain't going to get people. Luckily, we fluctuated enough, and the superintendent has had good powers of bringing some good people here at the wages we pay. And I don't see how you can get around it. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. You thought last year was bad, wait till we try again this year. And we got to work with the superintendents then. And these 2 SRO officers, I believe to start out, is going to cost $300,000. That's a lot of money. We were fighting over 10 cents last year. So trying to fight over 300,000 is even going to be worse. But we got to have them. So you're going to have to make some sacrifices somewhere. But I sit here and I listen all the time about how expensive the hedge shed is, and it is not. It's like anything else. people at the higher grade, it's gonna cost you more money. You can't get around it. So, it's one of those things that's fire department. Because he comes in and goes, man, we're doing good, and next week, the bottom fell out. And that's a job I wouldn't want myself.
Figurative fire department.
The issue is you have these positions for a low number of students. So it's maybe that they're not needed, it's that it's not diluted enough by the number of people in the school system.
But the problem is,
I'm agreeing with you.
yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. One more question for Ms. Bohannon-Stewart?
I mentioned Tuesday night that I was concerned that we were still hemorrhaging staff, and that the main reason for hemorrhaging staff was lack of support. I know paying people fairly is important, but so is feeling supported. And you know, I know many of the people well that have left, and I was one of the people that left and bled out, and I left because of crazy workload and lack of support. What steps are you taking to stop hemorrhaging staff?
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon-Stewart. I would just have to say before you answer, Dr. Daniel, that I disagree with the use of the term hemorrhaging staff. That is not an accurate representation or metaphor for the situation, and I look forward to Dr. Daniel informing us of the status of our staff.
I don't have the exact numbers of staff turnover, but I would agree with Dr. Gibbs in terms of hemorrhaging staff. I think and I think another question that I would bring up is, I think support means something very different depending on that staff member. So support may be, for some staff members, just give me the materials and leave me alone. Support for somebody else may be, hey, I really need you to come into my room and provide feedback on how I'm doing, or I need a mentor teacher to collaborate with, or I need a stronger team of co-teachers on my grade level. Support may be, I need a teacher assistant to come in and work with that child who I'm not able to yet manage their behaviors. Support could be, so I say all that to say that support is a somewhat nebulous term and is difficult to nail down depending on what the teacher is looking for. What things we've done in the past is we've gotten feedback, again, doing a climate survey in terms of discipline support. So how are we responding to discipline infractions? So we initiated a division-wide code of conduct that for administrators to have a leveled response for infractions. We've worked with principals to develop school-wide Tier 1 behavioral expectations. That is growing and improving, but that way every teacher has common language and common understanding of what is expected for classroom practices. We've worked with our federal director of federal programs and gifted services. She's also overseeing a lot of the professional development initiatives to target mentor programs, targeted professional development for teachers in terms of instructional practices as SOLs have evolved and Virginia Literacy Act has evolved. So we're trying to be more targeted about professional development programs, staying ahead of like Canvas implementation. So we've got 2 staff members who are working to be the leads in piloting the training for Canvas implementation down the road. We did kind of the same with Mastery Connect last year, giving teachers kind of a 6-month-ish head start as to kind of where they are going. I have a faculty and staff advisory committee meeting to solicit feedback from staff on a pretty regular basis. Again, that survey goes out for staff members to be able to communicate. Here are our concerns. I share that with, I go to the faculty meeting at each school and kind of share those results with the faculty members to get their feedback. So, and like we've had an older faculty. A lot of those folks have retired. I will also say that the teaching expectation, I think you've alluded to it many times in your communications, post-COVID is very different than pre-COVID. Mathews is not unique in having staff members leave the profession. I think a lot of staff members have sought greener pastures elsewhere. Some of those have found them. Some of those have realized that there's like, teaching is teaching. It's difficult work, especially after COVID, especially with state regulations and expectations and it being a bottleneck for society's cultural friction these days. So we're doing any number of things. I know, Ms. Hunley, when folks leave, there's an exit survey that we go back and look at that data to make decisions about, okay, what do we need to do differently? How do we need to tweak? Some of the staffing concerns we've brought up, like one of my frequent, when we go into budget season, is comparing our salary scale to other folks' salary scales. We are working with what I would say is a thought partner to adjust our salary scales, or to review our salary scales to see what we need to do to make sure that we're competitive and that we're transparent about what we're doing in terms of compensation for folks. So, I mean, it's multifaceted. There are multiple things that are going on. But I think there's also, too, the students that we are experiencing a student population of higher need that requires, and sometimes different skill sets, that requires sometimes different training. Sometimes it's been requiring additional people. So we're working to adapt our school division to meet the needs of the kids who are coming in, and that's, teachers are seeking and asking for that support. So, I mean, I don't know if anybody else on the board wants to add to that, but I feel like we're attempting to do various things to meet the varying definition of what support means to people.
I just have a couple things. First, I think there were less teachers that left last year than the year prior. So we're moving in the right direction. Secondly, we are undergoing a lot of change in a lot of ways, but primarily it's because we have less students. So the way that we have assigned teachers over the last 4 to 5 years has changed, and that's been very difficult. Where some teachers have to teach 2 topics when they didn't have to do that several years ago. And some of the things that we've tried have not been successful, and adapting to these less students, some have been successful. And there's going to be more change. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. We are going to go through more change, trying to respond to less students, be more financially efficient in how we hire our teachers and how they teach. And some people don't like change. That's very, very difficult. If they've taught for 20 years, and to make a change after 20 years is very difficult, and I get that. But I think we're moving in the right direction as far as less teachers leaving. Thank you for your point about each individual teacher has different needs as far as what support is. That's very individual, but change is going to continue. Hopefully, we can figure it out, what's working, and not have to keep making broad stroke changes. But as we merge 2 schools, there's going to be more change. I wish it wasn't. And as the curriculums change, there's going to be more change.
That's right.
I didn't substitute here at Thomas Hunter as much as I did over at the elementary school. And I see, when I did sub here, I saw much more challenging students because of the age, probably, and backgrounds, perhaps, and so forth. All of those things add up. Than I saw at the other school. We had challenges over there with behaviors as well and so forth. But as I listened on Tuesday night, the word you chose, as Dr. Gibbs said, on hemorrhaging, I had trouble with that word. I had great trouble with that word because I have not heard, I've heard, yeah, we need to change this, we need to change that, but overall, I think the teachers have been responding, at least to me, positively for the most part. And I know a lot of them. And as Ms. Hodges just said, we do have loads of challenges, but I don't hear the negative, I guess, as much as you have heard it. And I'm glad I haven't heard that as much. I just hope and pray we continue to grow in the right direction.
I love to use science words whenever possible, and I was trying to convey that we've lost lots of people. I worked in the school system for a long time, and it just seemed like we've lost tons of people in the last few years compared to past years. And like I said, I was one of them. The school that I worked at last year did not have the turnover that we did. I was one of the few that left New Kent Middle School last year. And most teachers there seem to be relatively happy. I'm concerned that we've gotten rid of some things that are, I would say, relatively low cost that help with teacher workload and make teachers feel supported, like IXL. Math teachers, I asked a question about IXL at a town hall meeting last year, and Dr. Daniel said something like it wasn't really fully utilized, and then I went and questioned the math teachers, and they're like, we used it. I don't know why we got rid of it. And of course, I don't want technology to be overused, okay? But I always thought that was used appropriately. It gave students immediate feedback on whether or not they were doing something right, and allowed you to differentiate for everybody in the same time. Ones that were mastering something quickly could go on to a new level, higher level of thinking with more challenging problems. And I got to use a program last year at New Kent Middle School called Quizzes. Now it's called Wayground. And I credit that as one of the things that helped make my workload as reasonable as possible, but also was great at helping me give students practice SOL questions that mimicked the types of things they would experience on the SOL test, and it was also easy to grade. We did that for bell work. Now, I wouldn't want teachers to start giving tons of homework on quizzes. It's online. I don't want technology overused, but that's another program that would make it easy for a teacher to give a test that mimics SOL test questions. So it would probably help with student achievement. I think it would help with student achievement. Help with student achievement where I taught last year. Something else that I think would make teachers feel supported is, of course, administrator subbing, but I've talked about that a lot. Another eye-opening thing for me that I never had until last year was working with another physical science teacher. And I know but maybe pairing them up with somebody in another district where they only have one, and they can, and I was actually helping our physical science teacher here from afar. I had a folder where my coworker and I, the other physical science teacher at New Kent Middle School, we would dump things in there, and then I shared it with Mr. Ligon. And he would go in there and pull things out and text me whenever he had questions, but those are some things that we really need to reduce teacher workload. And that's why I left. I took a lower paying job. Actually, I just quit. I didn't have a job. But I was okay with taking a lower paying job, and that's what I do now, and for a reasonable workload.
Thank you, Ms. Bohannon
something to
Stewart.
think about.
You did have that 2-minute response, and it is,
Okay.
has been exceeded, but I did have one question. What is you said something is called, it was quizzes, and now it's called what?
Wayground?
Say it again?
Wayground?
Wayground?
Wayground. Wayground.
Okay.
I believe
have
that's the
not
new name.
Heard of that.
It was awesome.
And the second thing I would like to know, I would like to ask Dr. Daniel, if you could please provide some IXL data in the future at a meeting or something that could bear out the achievement or the supportive achievement, or if you have any data from the past that would indicate that that was helpful. Or not helpful,
okay.
or whatever it
Okay.
was.
I don't know
You
that
don't
I'm
have to
going
do
to be
that
able
right now, I'm just asking for
Well,
that in the future
okay.
if you can.
The only thing the usage data would have gone away with the cancellation of the contract with Renaissance.
Makes sense.
But in terms of student performance last year was the first full year we did not have IXL. So especially in math, every math performance except for Algebra 1 increased over the previous year. So we actually saw our largest gains, content area-wise, in mathematics last year. And I'm not saying it was the removal of IXL. We did several other things in terms of double blocking. But I would also say, while I'm cognizant of teacher workload and work-life balance for instructional staff, my goal can't be what's the easiest for teachers. My goal has to be what is best for student achievement. When we had the conversation in a leadership meeting about renewing the IXL contract, which was purchased with COVID money originally. I think there was a 3-year contract or something like that that was purchased during COVID time. I asked, how much are we using it? And the response that I got during that questioning was not a lot. So that then led to the decision about not renewing that IXL contract. What my concern is, and again, I don't have the hard data to look at it, but I think it's more, what I worry about is IXL becoming the instruction and not the practice. So I think it's easy to allow IXL to be the instruction, and instead of allowing it just to be the practice and the rehearsal of things. So to convince me that right now we need IXL to improve student achievement is going to be a difficult thing, because we've seen math performance improve quite significantly in our school system. Are we still below the state average? Yes. Are we where we need to be? No. Have we seen quite significant gains? Yes, we have. So again, IXL is just one ingredient in the cake, for sure. Some of that is scheduling and assigning the right people and having the right staff and the right people in the right seats on the bus, if you will.
Yeah. I don't know of any teachers that overuse IXL. I never witnessed that in my years teaching there. And I know it's not your job to decide, well, maybe it is. Because see, losing teachers because they are constantly overwhelmed and overloaded affects student achievement. If you have a teacher leave mid-year, we usually can't replace them.
Right.
So in a way, a reasonable workload, I think, should be our goal, because that just trickles down to student achievement. Or if you have a tired, worn out teacher, it is important for everybody to achieve a good work-life balance.
Thank you, Ms.
So,
Bohannon Stewart.
Thank you.
And thank you for the audience, for those of you who have stayed. The rule was that we were going to leave at 8. It's after 8, however, we did have one submission of a question or concern that came in that I would like to read, if that is all right with the members and with the admin. All right. And this will be our final speaker, so to speak. This is from Miss Jenny Ewell of Halliford, Virginia. My name is Jenny Ewell. I was the middle school librarian for 5 years at Thomas Hunter Middle School. In 2024, I was reassigned to be the librarian for pre-K through 7th grade. I am asking for a designated librarian assistant to be placed in the 2025-2026 budget. I would also request to be part of the hiring process. Library is an extension of the classroom with planned lessons concentrating on library and English standards. I service 9 grade levels, 25 classes per week. Imagine teaching a class of 24 students on one side of the library, while at any given time having 8 to 15 students on the other side taking an assessment, reading, working on a project, etc. In addition to teaching, librarians have administrative duties. I manage 7 budgets and Chromebooks for both schools, seek 2 to 3 reputable book reviews for each book to be ordered, finalize and submit orders, process each book received, maintain current collection, issue many different types of reports, make signage and displays to assist our patrons for selection, recommend books to students. I manage the book fair setup, run sales, and pack up the fair, all of which require daily financial accountability to our bookkeeper and Scholastic. I help teachers with supplemental reading in their content area. I maintain an inviting library space for our students and staff, which is now for 2 schools. I apply and have received many grants over my library career. And don't forget library inventory, check-in, out of books, and shelving. I also do, quote, school support, unquote, duties. This year, I'm required to supervise second bell riders in the library every afternoon, and starting this month, supervise students who receive in-school suspension. At Tuesday's school board meeting, members questioned our reading and math scores. With the current schedule, I'm not able to run book clubs, library lunches, the reading cafe, monthly themed reading challenges, special events that promote reading, or collaborate with classroom teachers. I was told at the beginning of this year I would have a designated library assistant, which I learned recently is not the case. I do have help most of the time, which I am grateful, but the assistant that helps is pulled to cover classes. I need a designated assistant in the library that can learn the library's software, share in the administrative duties, and the ability to run services with me and or in my absence. I want to bring back services that promote reading initiatives and allow me time to improve services I'm trying to keep in place now. I've spoken to administration and several school board members over the last year, and I appreciate the opportunity to request a full-time library assistant in this forum. Thank you for considering my request. And to Mrs. Ewell's point, this is an issue that we have talked about quite a bit. Dr. Daniel, could you give the current status and talk to this issue a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think Ms. Ewell addressed it as part of the written comments. So last year there was not an assistant, I guess, assigned to the library. This year we made efforts to assign an assistant to the library. I think the concern has been, as we talked a little bit earlier about subs and kind of half-day situations, and if a TA, and if there's a TA who's working specifically with a student, we may have to pull from other spaces. I don't have the exact number of days or hours that the TA from the library has been pulled. My understanding is that it is not a regular occurrence, but I can check with Ms. Bray and Ms. Simpson to get an idea of how frequently that TA has had to be pulled to cover some situations. So the goal really was, part of what we needed to do was reduce staff to meet budget constraints. So we weren't able to add a position, so we reassigned. One of the things to keep in mind with our division is that we don't have a stratification of our teacher assistants, so they're all teacher assistants. And so the job description is all pretty much the same, and then they're assigned based on need. If I'm reading into a little bit of what Ms. Yule is asking, is to have a specific job classification of library assistant. We've had conversations as part of our turnover of teacher assistants, because I think where we do have a significant turnover issue is with our teacher assistants. And so do we look at a different salary structure, a different stratification for teacher assistants? To say this is an interventionist or this is a parapro versus a teacher assistant versus some other sort of tier, and then work to develop a different job description and then pay scale for those folks. So that's part of our salary scale conversation. Part of that challenge, though, the pushback on that is going to be, we're a really small school division, and so we have to be pretty flexible in how staff is assigned. We mentioned teachers having to teach 1 or 2 or 3 preps potentially. Our TAs are probably doing, in some cases, 6 or 7 preps, if you will, during their days. And so it's a staffing challenge, it's a funding challenge, it's a structural challenge. And again, Ms. Yule is not wrong in that while the numbers of students in the library isn't excessive, the programming of 7, 9 grade levels is definitely a challenging structure. As we had conversations yesterday about consolidation, I think one of the suggestions coming up is being able to have kind of a uniform schedule in K7 that will help ease some of that programming and planning burden that she's experiencing right now. So.
I agree. We've talked about the need, as you said, stratification is a good word, and pay.
And I
we
do
know the
believe
pay is abysmal.
It's terrible.
That issue is on the work session agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, good.
So we will be learning more about that. But I thank Mrs. Yule for sending in her comment, and I have spoken to her many times over the last couple of years, and I can sense her frustration. And I do know that librarians now are librarian teachers, and they have a lot of extra things that, again, when we were in school, the librarian did not do. And I can see the frustration. I would be curious to see how often and how disruptive it is to have the person, is it pulled very acutely? And I can see where that would be extra frustrating, because you're counting on this person to be there, and then it's kind of at the moment, it's an urgent need and they've got to go. So I don't blame her. It's a frustration. I wish we could have that be a designated person, but I completely understand with the consolidation that's going on. I think we will have to all get even more flexible than we already are. This is just a very challenging time that is going to continue to be challenging. And
Can I ask a question? What have we done? Years ago, you had class mothers. It was not a paid job. It was volunteer work. And they would come in and do things with that class. Did we wear that out or just iron it out because they didn't know how to teach or something? I know that's probably before your time, Dr. Daniels.
No, I mean, I think that, the challenge with, like, as I think we talked a little bit earlier about volunteers and
Right.
then vetting every volunteer. It also gets, I think a lot of the volunteer participation in the schools waned after COVID. I think it waned in willingness in some avenues on citizens, but I think there also is a waning of willingness within our staff. Part of the challenge with that is, as a teacher, you're having to, at least in the very early phases of that, develop almost a lesson plan or kind of a work plan for whoever that volunteer who is coming in. And so you've got to train that other person on how your class is going to happen and going to be run. I would say the room mother is probably a lost position. Just generationally, it's just not kind of a thing so much. And there continues to be, I think, a willingness to volunteer in some way from community members coming into the school. Some of that I've experienced is a very specialized willingness in what they want to do or how to do. So, I mean, it's a potential solution. We've talked about, especially in the library, about working with volunteers and trying to develop a very specialized skill set for the volunteers to come in and lend some assistance. I mean, we've a couple times have had that conversation.
Have teachers requested that? They requested volunteers, say, I'm ready,
No.
They have not.
Very rarely. I mean, there have been a few exceptions to that. I'm not sure if we've put out the request form this year. I know we have in years past, like, tell us, do you want to volunteer and what do you want them for? And then we tried to match that up with volunteer skill sets and from the volunteer list and sent out. And those things didn't line up all that much. So.
Is that something that we could reach out to the teachers for again?
I mean, I can send that out again. I can work with both principals to send that out again and think through who can help try to coordinate some of that.
Yeah.
That then becomes part of that
Yep.
challenge is
Yep.
matching like the approved volunteer list with, the needs or the wants for teachers. Oftentimes, what the teachers need is a regular commitment to, like, I need you every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10:15 to 10:58.
Right.
And that's often hard for volunteers to then schedule and commit to. I'm not blaming anybody on either side of that. It's just it's a hard match game.
Yep, I hear it. Are there any additional comments? All right. Thank you for everyone's attention, and I am sorry that we have gone over time, but I think this was a very productive town hall. Thank you for attending. Thank you for listening at home. And without any further comment, this town hall is now adjourned.